in 2004. The coach, Larry Brown, here with us on 97.1 The Ticket. Larry, good morning. How are you, sir?
It's been a tough day.
It has. I'm just wondering your initial thoughts on what the basketball world lost yesterday.
Well, I've been lucky to coach in the NBA and coach college, but the effect he had on kids was just incredible. So many of these young kids need a role model like Kobe because he didn't only do it on the court. Just think what he was doing with his life, after basketball. And kids need to understand that. And he was such a great example. I just thought about this. I heard somebody saying he was taking his daughter to an AAU basketball game. Can you imagine that? I mean, he's one of the greatest players to ever live, and he dies taking his daughter to a basketball game. It's just real sad. I don't know. It's going to be a huge loss. We lost David Stern, who did so much for the league, and now you lose maybe as good a player as we ever had play our sport. And he was doing so much more, with his life, promoting women's basketball. And I don't know, he was just such a good example for everybody.
You lost to him in an NBA Finals when you were with Philly, and you obviously beat him here with the Pistons. Can you reflect on both those series a little bit?
Well, in Philly, we were kind of banged up, and they were just phenomenal, that team. But the only way you had a chance against a team like the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe and a lot of other great players was you had to have somebody that made Kobe earn his points. You had to have multiple guys be able to guard him, and then you had to have multiple fouls to take with Shaq because you couldn't guard him without fouling him. And in Philly, we lost in 5 games. Most of the games were really close. We had a chance to win the first 2, but we didn't have the fouls at center to guard Shaq. We just had Mutombo. Geiger was hurt. And then, we had George Lynch and Aaron McKee were hurt. And, to guard Kobe, you had to have multiple people be able to guard him. And in Detroit, we just had unbelievable depth. And we had rim protectors, and then we had guys that could guard on the perimeter. You weren't going to stop either one, but just playing against him was a thrill for me. That every time you sat on the bench in the NBA, somebody did something really extraordinary, and you'd shake your head. Well, playing against Kobe, he did that constantly. It was amazing.
We're talking to Larry Brown, the former Piston head coach here on 97.1 The Ticket. Stoney and I were kind of discussing, I don't believe you ever coached Kobe. He was not on the '04 Olympic team unless you were coaching on an international team of some sort. But the stories of his practice are legendary. And I'm wondering, from a work ethic standpoint, from observing him on the opposing sideline or stories you heard, is he the hardest worker this game has ever seen?
I haven't seen them all, but I can't imagine anybody worked any harder. I'll give you a little Kobe story about his work ethic. One, he never gave anything less but his very best every time he played. And I had heard from Mitch Kupchak and other people that had been around him that was exactly how he approached his job. But they had an ABCD camp with Nike where all the young best players show up, and a group of them were asked if they wanted to go watch Kobe work out, and naturally they all did. And they were told to be ready at 5:45. and to watch him work out. They assumed it was 5:45 in the afternoon, and that was his summer ritual. He worked out in the morning on individual stuff, and then he came back late in the afternoon and worked on team stuff. And he did that all summer to prepare. I remember Mitch Kupchak telling me as he got older, he tried to tell Kobe he had to tone it down a little bit. But that was the message he gave to everybody. And then, being fortunate enough for me to coach on, every level, I would tell young kids, talent is a gift from God, character is a choice. And, obviously Kobe had unbelievable talent, but the thing that separated him is just desire to be the best and the fact that he was willing to put the time in. And that was the message he's given to all these clinics that he's gone to. And when he speaks to young kids, that's what he tells them all. And then the saddest thing is what he was doing with his life after basketball, because so many of these kids don't even realize, once you're done playing, there's so much of your life ahead of you, and that you got to do something with it. And he was an incredible example of that.
Was his defense underrated? Because most great superstars aren't known for their defense. He was.
Well, I heard Jerry West one time say to me, when we were talking about Kobe and Michael and some of the great ones, Kobe was not only as good an offensive player as we have ever seen. He got 81 points. That's second to Wilt's 100. Scored 60 his last game. He got 61 in the Garden. But he not only was that way offensively, he guarded the best guy on defense. And if you're a coach, a lot of times you're going to protect that guy. But he wouldn't stand for that. That's just who he was. But he was the best on both ends of the court most nights.
So, Larry, we were joking earlier about Game 2 of the 2004 Finals when Kobe hit that three to force overtime and what turned out to be the only loss you guys suffered. Now, I was reading some things yesterday online. It said Larry Brown wanted to foul a Lakers player so they could only get 2 points rather than 3. However, the Pistons veterans only wanted to intentionally foul Shaq, allowing Kobe for the three-pointer. So, you want to tell us the truth? What happened there in that sequence?
Yeah, I think there was about 7 or 8 seconds, Stoney.
Yeah.
And Phil called the timeout. And, when you play in the NBA, your scouts know everything that people are going to run. I've seen them, Kobe, score a winning basket or a tying basket late in the game over and over again, especially a sideline out of bounds. So at the timeout, I said, let's foul, because we don't want Kobe to make a three and send it into overtime, and you never know what's going to happen. And they all looked at me and said, Coach, we never foul. So I said, all right, what if they throw it at Shaq? Can we foul Shaq? Because we never hack a Shaq.
Right.
And he kisses me on the lips every time he sees me because he averaged 40 against us, I guess. But I said, what if they throw it to Shaq? Can we foul him? And then they kind of mumbled around, and then they went out on the court and huddled up and said, no, we're not going to foul. So they didn't listen to me half the time anyway. And sure enough, Kobe comes off a double screen and double clutches and hits a three, and we lose in overtime. But it was true. But that was him. But I don't know. I heard Jalen Rose and so many of the young players yesterday talking about Kobe and what he meant to them and what they were feeling at that very moment. It's really sad. he's taken his daughter to an AAU basketball game. That tells you the commitment that he had to his family.
And the commitment he had to women's basketball. He was all about that. He was talking about her hopefully going to UConn someday, and it's so tragic.
Yeah, it is. And, when you think of the impact our players have on kids' lives, you're looking for these positive role models. I think about LeBron building a school, David Robinson building a school, Jalen Rose, so committed to helping and giving back. Kobe, we can't lose people like this. We lose David Stern, who did so much for our game. But this guy, he, when you talk to your team and when you say, hey, you want to be great, this is what it takes. What an example. I got a call, Mark Turgeon played and coached with me, and they just beat Indiana, and I congratulated them. And then he told me, he said, Larry, my kids are just devastated right now. And I've heard from a lot of coaches had the very same, remarks about how their kids are feeling, with the loss of Kobe and his daughter and the other people with him.
Hey, Larry, we really appreciate the time. I know it's a difficult morning for you. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes out of it.
All right, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Take care.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
There he is. Larry Brown, the Hall of Famer, joining us here on 97.1.